Hello, 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 hello. 7:25 p.m. Let's do this. Evening, Wednesday, July 30th, 2025. We got just one more day left in the month. And I just got to keep on pushing and pushing and pushing to get the views up. Wow, the censorship is amazing. I just did a tweet. And I'm not saying, you have to follow me on Twitter, okay? It was rather unremarkable. I just noted that there was a website that's down. And after an hour, I had 8 views on my tweet. 8. I have 7,000 followers, which is, considered, great. It's great people, but that is, in all honesty, a low number by Twitter metrics or X metrics, okay? I had 8 impressions after 1 hour. I don't know how much more censored someone can get. So I just have to just keep on pushing. Keep on pushing the button. Keep on making the content. Keep on moving forward. Because, wow. Eventually, I imagine the work that's being done. I know a lot of people see it, and the views that don't get counted by some rather influential people. I can see the words coming through in their videos and their responses. So I know that it's not invisible to everyone. It's just invisible to the wider population that is not actually part of the narrative control, and that it is what it is. It's true. So, but I imagine eventually people will be compelled to want to share more and more, and we'll get there. I know it's going to happen. It will be squeaking by this month to hit the goal, but I'll try to do whatever I can. We'll figure out a way. The title of tonight's live stream, one and done, is how to make vaccines safe. Enough about all this nonsense about, I wonder if vaccines, I don't know, I'm still undecided about vaccines. Oh, I'm a never vaxxer. I don't ever want a vaccine. There's, as Jonathan Cooey, PhD, GigaOM, suggested today, he showcased Sherry Tenpenny and her 25 years, 50,000 hours invested, and after all of that, missing family events, giving up family, spending day, night, weekends, holidays. The best she has is that she doesn't really, her mind isn't made up. And as hard as I've worked, it's still just a fraction of that. It's maybe, 10, 15,000 hours. I don't really know how to add it up right now, but that's a ballpark, okay? It's not 50,000 hours. And it comes down to, it's a stupid idea to inject a combination of substances into one's body, period. The answer of, are vaccines safe, is it's stupid to inject any combination of substances into a body. And it doesn't matter if you call it food or medicine or vaccines or poison. It is unsafe to inject a combination of substances into the body. Intramuscularly. It is unsafe to inject a combination of substances into the body intramuscularly. What else needs to be said? That's not safe. Can you hear me? I'm not answering the question of how to make a vaccine safe. I'm saying that's the wrong. Well, actually, if there was the ability to have a vaccine, and vaccina means of cow. It's actually, the entire concept was inspired by the fact that people would get allergic reactions on their hands if they did a lot of work with farm animals, in particular cows. And it was observed that if you, pre-expose people to some material or some substrate of a cow's skin, could be pus or something like that, into a cut, that the odds of getting an allergic reaction on the hands is significantly lessened. And you know what? That's actually possibly true. That might actually happen. Now, I'm sure that there's many combinations of it, and which cow and one's, how is it applied and so on. It's applied on the skin. It's applied on an immune barrier. And yes, we do have adaptive immunity for different environmental conditions, for different exposures. There you go. That's vaccinia. That's what it is. That at some point that turned into killing bacteria and injecting it into a muscle. How did that leap ever happen? It is unsafe to inject a combination of substances into a muscle. It is unsafe to inject a combination of substances into a muscle. It is unsafe to inject a combination of substances into a muscle. And it doesn't matter if you call it a vaccine or not. So, Hilary Koprowski, I think, gave us some ideas. Dr. Hilary Koprowski, the late Hilary Koprowski, died in 2013, lived into his 90s, about how to make a safe vaccine. Now, just the word vaccine, what does it really mean? Is it adapt immunity, give someone protection against something? That itself is a very loose definition, very loosely used term, okay? But, okay, let's just roll with it, all right? If there is some way to use a product which gives someone some, biological protection against something, it has to come through an immune barrier or be presented at an immune barrier. There you have it. And you know what? Protecting yourself against SARS through an intramuscular injection won't work. It's just not going to work. It's like trying to add oil to an engine for a car by pouring it into the back seat or throwing it on the car. The oil goes through the oil cap on top of the engine. You just don't throw it onto the car and maybe a little gets in there somehow. There's ways to put fluids into a car. There's a way to get fluids out of a car, actually, by design. There's input and output channels and doors and exits and so on. Hilary Koprowski made and advocated and was the first to use an oral polio vaccine. Now, I have big questions about whether or not it actually provided protection against anything. However, though, for the most part, nobody got a reaction to it. Nobody got polio in reaction to that vaccine. Now, the official narrative is there was a slight risk of polio reaction. There was a slight risk of paralysis. Isn't it fascinating that the only vaccine which there is a warning about with respect to it causing a problem is an oral vaccine? That's the only one they will make mention of. Isn't it interesting that the only vaccines that the FDA or CBER will issue a warning about with respect to not being powerful enough are inhaled vaccines like flu mist? That's the only vaccine they have ever questioned. Isn't that crazy? Isn't it amazing that Paul Offit said that all vaccines could someday be oral vaccines? First off, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So why is he seemingly okay with transitioning all vaccines to being oral vaccines? Why is it that Paul Offit's only vaccine, the rotavirus vaccine, is an oral vaccine? Staring everyone in the face right here is an answer to a question which no one has been able to answer. Are vaccines safe? How do you make vaccines safe? And Sherry Tenpenny saying 50,000 hours, 25 years. She's written all these books. She's read thousands of books. Remember what I've been telling you as an analyst, okay? If you want to learn how to be an analyst, never go down the path that has been so polluted and bullshit that you need multiple lifetimes to read all the books. You'll never figure it out. Obviously, it's not working. I'm not making any statement that I'm smarter than any of those people. It just, as chance would have it, I had a different career path and learned different skills, okay? And one skill I've learned is you don't go down that path. None of us will ever figure out the Kennedy assassination by reading the several thousand books on the Kennedy assassination. First off, nobody will live long enough to read them all and make cliff notes. And anyone suggesting that they're going to help you figure out the answer to that little puzzle by reading all of those books, and that they've read those books and they have the answers, is bullshitting you. I'm actually going to say, I believe I've made more progress on the Kennedy assassination with one simple question. What about Estes Kefauver? Oh, the Human Genome Project, the longest-running, most heavily funded project in all of documented human civilization, which involves vaccines, drugs, the FDA, and so on. And Kefauver's his name is prominently on that. The most important project, the most heavily funded project, and the guy whose name is on the FDA amendments is the one who's killed in Congress just a few weeks before JFK. And JFK loved Kefauver. No one will entertain that. You know why? They're a bunch of beep. And that topic has never been tackled anywhere, precisely because it rapidly gets you to the truth. Just like, where does all this vaccine problem come from? Simple. Injecting shit into your body is bad. Period. That's it. There's the answer. And unfortunately, when the decision was made to start using hypodermic syringes to inject intramuscularly a vaccine in the late 1800s, people were becoming comfortable and actually eager to use that because many people were becoming morphine addicts. And they realized morphine worked better when you inject it. So I guess they just assumed vaccines would be the same. Not to mention the fact that they thought the vaccines would go further if they injected them, just like morphine goes further if you inject it. And also, each doctor had their one hypodermic syringe, so they could inject the whole town. And they were getting comfortable with mass vaccinations because of the agriculture, because many worked on farms as well. And also, with the smallpox vaccine, you needed a dedicated piece of ivory, an ivory point that was manufactured for each person that needed a vaccine. However, when it came to all of the other new vaccines, all you needed was your one needle that you already bought and a big bottle of fluid that said diphtheria antitoxin or something, and you can start injecting away. There you go. There's your answer. It was cheaper, it could be done at scale, and people made a bad judgment on if it would work. Then they started intramuscularly injecting things, believing that it must work, because they knew smallpox vaccine had some benefits, and detaching smallpox vaccine benefits from the benefits of improved sanitation is very difficult. It is quite difficult. I think both sides need to respectfully understand that there's a lot of contrasting information there. However, though, it is not unreasonable to believe that there was some benefit to smallpox vaccines based upon the way that they were administered. None of this existed I would just say all of the cost, though, the overhead, they all disappeared once you went with hypodermic syringes and intramuscular injection. And they refused to believe it couldn't work. And then childhood paralysis started. Look at the U.S. newspapers. The frequency of the phrase childhood paralysis, infantile paralysis, starts going from zero and starts creeping up starting in the year 1880, and it creeps up in perfect coordination with the use of hypodermic syringes for intramuscular injection of vaccines. And Sherry Tenpenny and Susan Humphreys and everyone else in the medical freedom movement are as silent on that as they are about the murders of Tony Bark and Brandy Vaughn, who are saying it right. Oh, what was Brandy Vaughn saying? Ingestion versus injection. Wow, Brandy Vaughn was killed. Isn't that interesting? She, as unsophisticated as she was, she saw it very simply. If you want to eat a sandwich, you eat it. You don't mush it up and inject it, because things are supposed to go through your body. Either, if it's fumigated, I guess, you could breathe it in, or you eat it. That's how things get from here to in here. Wow, you don't need a PhD to understand this stuff. Brandy Vaughn didn't have a PhD, and she started to understand it. She saw it. Hilary Koprowski did oral vaccines. Now, he also noticed with a rabies vaccine that he worked on in the 1940s that rabies vaccine, which was injected, was causing, you won't believe this, hold on to your hats, it was causing infantile paralysis. And he got the bright idea of, wow, maybe if people just ingest it. And you know what? Of course, no wonder why he wasn't worried about it. Just about anyone can actually drink a thimbleful of anything and probably be okay. There is evidence that people have eaten entire bicycles by grinding it up into little pieces and then mixing it in with their meals. So anyone that says aluminum is a problem, well, yeah, aluminum in your body is a problem. So you know what? Aluminum eaten, it doesn't get into the body. Isn't that amazing? It's almost as if intramuscular injection is bad. And I think that they throw things like aluminum and mercury and all this other stuff into vaccines, more so and more so, precisely to have a distraction. Well, of course it's bad if you're injecting it. Injecting anything is bad. Matter of fact, injecting morphine is actually a bad idea too. However, we have learned that as a pure substance, when used properly or when used in a situation of an emergency, it is a very valuable tool. But it too is completely unnatural. We were not designed as animals, or we did not evolve as animals, whichever hat you prefer to wear, to have morphine injected into us. Even if you believe that God put the poppy plant on the planet for people to, be more creative and socialize and whatever, he didn't put it on the planet next to a hypodermic syringe factory. But they learned that you could do it that way. You could inject it, and you could get more of the effect. It wouldn't be filtered out by your digestive system, and you can even find ways to perhaps localize the effects, which would be beneficial for surgeries and so on. Innovation. It was a bad idea. Injecting things is bad. There. You don't need a PhD to understand it. You don't need a PhD. You don't need 10 years and 50,000 hours of research to know that you can't use the nutrients and the calories of a sandwich if you mush it up and inject it. You don't need to read any books to understand that. It's common sense. A 10-year-old can understand that. There's immunology. However, so much has been learned by all of the things which have happened as a consequence of this horrible idea that there is reluctance to give it up, even though I believe it is known by quite a few people that it's a bad idea, it injures people, and it kills people. But they don't want to give it up. There is a desire, I believe, to transition from intramuscular injection to oral vaccines. Now that I can, my eyes have been opened, I can see the documents, and I think this is why Paul Offit, amongst many people, has out there on the forefront. He's defending vaccines, he's defending the art of vaccination, he's defending the history of immunization, and he's being crafty, though, okay? He's trying to conceal the upcoming planned transition out of intramuscular injections into oral vaccines. Now, whether oral vaccines themselves are actually helpful against anything, I don't know. Why should an oral vaccine work, but the nutrients of a food not? Not to mention, if it's claimed that there can be genetic modifications or improvements or enhancements to people with intramuscular injection currently, how is it possible that it is also unknown how to ingest a vaccine and have it get inside the body? Wouldn't it make common sense? Wouldn't it be sensible to assume that if people know how to genetically modify a body through to transfection, that they would have also somewhere along the way figured out how to get it into the bloodstream and into the muscles through the digestive tract? Oh, no, they haven't. Which further highlights that they have no business injecting things into a body. None. It should stop immediately. Now, this also opens up the door to oral vaccines. You know what? As a challenge project, I looked online. I'm willing to take an oral vaccine. So I said, no, I'm serious. I'm not joking. I would be happy to take Hilary Koprowski's oral polio vaccine. I'm not worried about it. I mean, maybe it would give me diarrhea for a week or something. I don't know. But I'm not afraid of it giving me cancer. I'm not afraid of it causing heart arrhythmia. I'm not afraid of it causing paralysis. You know why? Because I'm ingesting it. And maybe it does have some benefits somehow. I don't know. But I'm not afraid of it. You know what? As an American, I can't get it. It's actually outlawed in my country because there's a 1 in 28 million chance that it could cause paralysis. I don't even know how they figured that out. I'll bet you it's actually confusion with another vaccine. I'll bet you the data is not even real. But I can't get it. I actually have no options to take oral vaccines. I might be able to take an oral rotavirus vaccine. And I want to do this because I think that there's more traction to be gained by extending the olive branch over to the camp of people that are very pro-vaccine. I am no longer anti-vaccine. I am definitely 1 billion% against the intramuscular injection of vaccines or any combination of substances. I'm 100% against it. So there's a starting point. Oh, you want a vaccine? Okay, it's got to be something that we ingest. That's a natural route. And if someone who is very pro-vaccine were like, well, would you have against injecting? I'd be like, well, can you explain how? Can you explain how that would even work? And if you're smart enough to make something that provides people immunity against something, and if you can't figure out how to get it through the digestive tract, then maybe it doesn't work exactly how you think it works. Because the censorship, as I said, I put up a tweet, it gets 8 views in an hour? No one's seeing me. However, maybe we can make some friends over there who love vaccines. Maybe we can get to them. Now, oh my goodness, it's too hot. I got to turn my air conditioner down 1 second. Now, this is the article. This is the Philadelphia Inquirer on November 6, 2000, about, a year before that thing. And it's called The Gulp Heard Around the World. Before Sabine, before Salk, Hilary Koprowski took a daring drink of live polio virus that led to a vaccine and victory over the disease. The Jefferson researcher is finally getting his due. That's Thomas Jefferson University. And it reads as follows. On a cold day in January, I guess I'm going to have to refresh that page, huh? On a cold day in January 1948, Hilary Koprowski lifted a glass beaker in his laboratory at Pearl River, New York, and gulped down an oily liquid made with ground-up cotton rat brain that had been infected with live polio virus. He survived. 2 years later, that glop of goo became the world's first oral polio vaccine to be administered to human subjects, 20 boys and girls at a nearby home for retarded children. Ultimately, Koprowski, who went on to become the longtime director of Philadelphia's Wistar Institute, lost the race to get his vaccine licensed in the United States. The honor went to Albert Sabine. Interesting. They kind of cut him down a little bit. The feisty Koprowski has often drawn controversy. Most recently, he fought off allegations that his polio vaccine trials in Africa had launched the global AIDS epidemic, allegations that were roundly rebuffed at an international forum in London. Okay, hold the presses right there. Why is it that there was obviously a sanctioned anti-vaccine narrative that AIDS came from a vaccine? But of all the vaccines that were available, they specifically chose an oral vaccine. Now, I suspect it is impossible to have an RNA pandemic. It is impossible to have an RNA virus that evolves in a person and then suddenly contagiously spreads all over the planet, infecting man and animal and other animals alike. But even if we are liberal with the science, okay, and think that that is possible, it is a whole nother step to think that that would happen with an oral vaccine. It would strike me as even more difficult, because when we ingest something, it's immediately going through the digestive tract is not a pleasant experience for any biological material. It's getting broken down into amino acids. It is getting sanitized. It is a huge armies of different types of bacteria in there. It is a violent place. It's almost as if they chose the one vaccine, the one administrated vaccine that had an administration type that they knew was impossible. And it's also interesting, the one scientist that they would that they hung out a little bit and would allow people to attack is the one guy associated with the oral vaccine. And for the most part, his vaccine was also reused by Albert Sabin. No one said Sabin's responsible, only Koprowski. Now, the books, The River, and of course, Rainbow Space Cat, that piece of trash. All of these accounts, they love to go after Koprowski for this stuff as a monster. And I made the mistake of not being more discerning when it came to this. So I fell into the trap, but it always felt like something was wrong. I just couldn't quite figure it out. What was it? And it turns out that it's okay to pick on this one because it keeps people off balance, and it ensures that a lot of people never pick up on the fact. That may be one of the reasons why there's so much harm associated with vaccines, is because of intramuscular injection of any combination of substances is potentially dangerous or fatal. Whether you call it a vaccine or not, it doesn't matter. You can call it disco juice, you can call it food, whatever. It's bad. You shouldn't do it. But today, Koprowski, 83, can take pride in his scientific achievement of 50 years ago. It laid the groundwork for Sabin's vaccine, which has been used to immunize children around the globe against polio. That's right. All of these children that took the oral polio vaccine no longer got child paralysis. Isn't that remarkable? They also no longer got intramuscular injections. Huh. What a amazing connection there. Isn't it amazing how many children would get a smallpox vaccine and an oral polio vaccine, and that's it? And they were fine. No polio, and the smallpox vaccine, well, it is what it is, right? Wow, there you go. Wow, they really needed 50,000 hours and 25 years of Sherry Tenpenny's work in combination with other people. An accumulation of easily millions, tens or hundreds of millions of hours of research, thousands or tens of thousands of books, hundreds of thousands of papers. You don't need to read any of it. You eat sandwiches and you don't inject them. Why would vaccines be any different? stuff is not meant to go into the body directly. It is meant to go through a filter. It is meant to be broken down into amino acids by the digestive system. There's meant to be bacteriophage communication with the gut biome and the cells of the body, perhaps the mitochondria directly. I don't really know. And they can't even figure out how to get something considered a vaccine to be broken down properly and put into the body by the digestive system. And if they can't figure that out, what hope do you think there really is that they understand how to stop infectious diseases by intramuscular injection? There is no hope. There might be something to these oral vaccines, though, maybe. The rotavirus vaccine is supposedly rotavirus only impacts the digestive system and causes a diarrhea in infants. I don't know why I would need one, but I'm not afraid. But, gun to my head, I take it. I'm not afraid of it. What's the worst that could happen? I get the runs for a few days, maybe some cramping. It'll be no fun. But I've been there before. I've eaten bad sandwiches on airplanes. I've been there. I've eaten airport food. I even ate my brother-in-law's badly cooked turkey once, where half the family thought they were on death's bed for 24 hours afterwards. I survived. I would take the oral vaccines. How to make them safe. Don't inject them. Case closed. You could put it on a billboard. You could put it on a business card. You could have this conversation in the back of a cab with the cab driver. We can refine this conversation, and it's easy. It's simple. You don't need to announce yourself as an anti-vaxxer. Just highlight the obvious problems, the inability of anyone to answer the question of, why would you inject things? Why should injecting a combination of substances work? Can you prove that the body has any ability to do that at all? To handle that in any scenario? Going back here, last week, the World Health Organization declared its Western Pacific region, including all of China with its 1 billion people, polio free. And so they did make a change there's been some change in intramuscularly injected vaccine technology. I don't know what it is. We'll figure it out eventually. I believe they did find something, some way of refining it to reduce the occurrence of paralysis. I suspect that they did. And that was pitched as now we've cured polio. Now, unfortunately, I believe other problems are caused. SIDS still happens. However, this is where it gets more confusing because, yes, there are quite an abundance of children with a variety of mental health issues, digestive issues, and so on. But you're not going to find the answer to be as simple as, it was this particular vaccine. It is possible, it is likely, that the increased occurrence of cancers and other, autoimmune disorders are indirectly connected to intramuscularly injected medical procedures, vaccines, whatever. And once one's immune system is compromised, there is an increased uptake of antibiotics. And antibiotics for young children is a very, very risky proposition. The young children, infants, they barely have their gut biome worked out yet. And antibiotics can wipe out entire colonies of necessary microorganisms, which can have a permanent, lifelong impact, such as diarrhea, such as malnutrition, such as learning disabilities. But it kind of starts off by, why are you injecting things into a baby? The baby just came out of the womb. Why are you injecting stuff into it? Maybe the use of antibiotics, oral antibiotics, would be dramatically less if young children and infants weren't being injured so much with intramuscular injections. So there is something to this concern about antibiotics. There is something legitimately to it. And by 2005, polio is expected to be wiped out everywhere on the planet. It'll be a monumental achievement. That is no small measure. It can be traced back to Koprowski's original daring. And he said, I took the polio because it was a big, important disease. Interesting photo here. This is Hilary Koprowski. I think this is Koprowski in the middle. And this is Thaddeus Wichter there. And I think it's Albert. No, Thaddeus Wichter is here. I don't know much about him. And this is actually Stanley Plotkin. Stanley Plotkin is right over there. Now, Stanley Plotkin, I believe, also knows that the intramuscular injection is bad. But they are part of a bigger machine. And they have been challenged with this. Okay, here's the challenge. The most important national security priority and the most important worldwide scientific endeavor is understanding the machinery of human life. It is the one endeavor that connects all nations. It connects ethnicities, it connects races, it connects past generations, and it connects future generations. It is the top level, the most important, the most heavily funded scientific endeavor in all of documented human history. And it is my speculation, and the growing speculation of others, that it cannot advance without humans available for medical experimentation. And one of the most important avenues for humans to be available for medical experimentation is experimentation via intramuscular injection. You know, it's funny. That's kind of what Josef Mengele was doing in World War II. He was injecting things into people. He was cutting people open and throwing sand and dirt, biological material from animals and other people into these people over there and observing what happened. What is actually the difference between that and injecting a foreign biological material into one's body? Guess what? There is no difference. The only difference is the quantity, and the only difference is what it's called. There it was called medical experimentation and torture, but now it's called a medical procedure for your benefit, protecting the world against contagious diseases. And people aren't going to sign up to be medical test monkeys, especially not children. Nor will people sign up their children for it. However, people will roll up their sleeves if they think it's for the greater good, or they think it's for to protect themselves against infectious diseases. So they found the right scientists that at the very top, anyways, that know this, and I believe they also all know that going forward, this practice of intramuscular injection is going to face more and more headwinds. I think they know it's no good. I think they've been trying to find ways to exercise it to create situations which could be viewed as beneficial. That might even mean using badly manufactured food in some instances to create some imbalances or some scenarios where they could say, hey, more kids that got this shot and versus not benefited. I think that they've twisted around like that because they know that they are decades. They could be a century away still from knowing how to create a vaccine which could survive the digestive system. They don't even have that figured. They don't even have that licked yet. Think of how far they have to go. So they're not willing to give that up anytime soon. They need to keep kicking the can. I believe Hilary Koprowski knew this, which is why, and if you read into the details of his work, he said he ingested it because that's the natural route. He just said it plain as day. I'm not saying that he's the good guy. I do see, though, how he might have pissed off a lot of people. I think he pissed off a lot of people. They even made Albert Sabin the real scientist behind the oral vaccine because they didn't want Koprowski to get the credit for it. I think they really were pissed at him. There were several other very interesting things on this particular area. I forgot exactly. They just went through my head like a minute ago, but I don't think I'm actually going to cover them right now. That's 43 minutes in. I think Jaws. I saw that Jaws is now in its 50th anniversary. I find that to be fascinating. It's amazing how fast time and life is going by. The one little story, research-related story I will share is that it was about 5 or 6 years ago. I don't remember exactly when. I was doing a lot of when I started to get into this realm of online research. I was trying to. I did a lot of work on what I thought at the time were the bad guys. Okay, the undocumented badness, and which is usually where most people start. And that led to, because at the time the FBI director Robert Mueller was in the news a lot, learning more about his family, and then eventually learning that his granddad worked in fertilizers back in the 19-teens, 1920s, which eventually led to the material that is used for bombs, explosives, and then nuclear fuels. So Nuclear Fuel Services, NFS, has a very strong connection to the Robert Mueller family. Anyways, this led, in turn, to me interested in, well, why is it that when nuclear fuels get stolen, so people don't look for them? I thought you could make horrible bombs and stuff out of them, which led me to saying, I wonder if nukes are real, and so on and so forth. Anyways, one of the many data points, I don't know where it ranks, though, that was along the way that made me go, gee, I wonder if nukes are real, was revisiting one of my favorite scenes in the movie Jaws. And the movie Jaws was put forth, or I should say, of course, filmed, produced by Steven Spielberg. And the scene is where they're on the boat. It's about an hour and 10 minutes through the movie. Quint, the captain, recalls that he was in the United States Navy in World War II, and he was actually on the USS Indianapolis. And now the Indianapolis was actually the pride of the United States Pacific Fleet, and was heavily damaged in I think 1944. It's I think at a full list, found its way back to the United States, where it was rapidly repaired. And then it was sent out for one more mission, and that mission was to carry what was said to be all of the materials for the atomic bombs out to Tinian Island. And then from there, it was actually, that's where the flights took off, supposedly for the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings. Now, the story, as told by Quint, was that after the Indianapolis left, and Indianapolis, after it was retrofitted, was the fastest ship in the Pacific. It actually set records. It was a very, very impressive battleship. After it left, it went out sort of in the middle of nowhere, and they didn't send radio signals, and somehow a Japanese submarine found it and sank it. And about 85% of the crew died from exposure, because it took 6 or 7 days for any rescue to come. And as legend has it, and this is why the story is told in the movie Jaws, many of the men, many of the sailors that had survived the sinking of the ship in the middle of the Pacific were eaten alive by sharks. I don't know how much of that is true or not, but that's definitely the legend of the USS Indianapolis. It's actually the co-founder of Microsoft, Bill Gates' partner, that put the money forward, or I should say invested the money to find the Indianapolis in the Pacific. And after finding the sunken Indianapolis, they made a decision to not release publicly actually where it's located. So you can understand how there can be some open speculation about what exactly happened there. Now, the fact that it's the co-founder of Microsoft that commissioned the mission to find the sunken USS Indianapolis. It was Gardner. I can't think of the guy's name right now. It doesn't matter. You guys know who I'm talking about. It is striking, because Microsoft also has a weird connection, a very strange connection to Steven Spielberg. And that connection is that Microsoft Basic and some of those other technologies were actually written. I think it was the University of Vermont, or it was one of the smaller New England universities where other people of the Manhattan Project worked. And it was some of those authors which moved over. One of them eventually became an economist over the University of Washington and worked with Bill Gates' father. So, and Steven Spielberg himself went on to become sort of a pioneer in the mainframe computing industry. He engineered and sold quite a few supercomputers in his time. I think it was IBM or another company. So I started to doing this little storyline, Atomic Soft, thinking that there was maybe some connection between Hiroshima and Nagasaki and Microsoft. I mean, I just started openly speculating about it. And I didn't really find anything super significant other than the fact that there are people at the time who probably had high-level clearances, and maybe they knew each other a little bit, but it was just a fun thing to talk about. However, though, there's another Spielberg that is always been a curiosity of mine, and that's the one that was in the aerospace industry. And that Spielberg was the brother of Steven Spielberg, the brother of the brother of Steven Spielberg's dad. You remember, it was Steven Spielberg's dad. Do I have this right? Yeah. Who worked in the computing industry, and it was Steven Spielberg's uncle. I think it was Al Spielberg, who wound up being an engineer in the aviation industry, but also was an avid photographer. So the last thing I'll throw out there on speculation in this completely unrelated rant is I think it's possible that the pictures of the Enola Gay were taken by Steven Spielberg's uncle. I think it's possible that a lot of the photography, which is still used to today as the proof, here's the pilot and here's the Enola Gay logo. Of course, there were several Enola Gays. You know that, right? You can actually see how the writing changed between the rivets, how it would move around, because they made several Enola Gays for different photo shoots. But I do think the Spielberg family had some connection with that. The atomic bomb didn't happen. They firebombed those cities. I don't know exactly how many people died. Could have been a lot less than they said. It could have been a lot of people. It is interesting that the nation of Japan had a massive population boom between 1946 and 1950, which approximately equaled a one-time childbirth increase, which resulted in a net gain in the population similar to the supposed losses of life in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Just going to throw that one out there. And all the witnesses, by the way, were Jesuits. There was Jesuit monasteries, and the location of the Nagasaki bombing, of course, was the Roman Catholic Church in Japan. And just before the start of COVID-19 in Japan, the Pope went there to blow out the still burning embers from Nagasaki, ceremonially, I guess, ending Japan's silence on what exactly happened regarding the World War II atomic bombings. And then after going back over to Europe, the Pope then decided to open up the archives of the Joseph Mengele medical experimentation, which had up until then been protected. Of course, the Pope was anyways, the previous Pope, on a very close first-name basis with the guy in the middle of the photo here, Hilary Koprowski. Hilary Koprowski was very, very close with the Vatican. Very close. He could call the Pope anytime, first-name basis, couple of them actually. He even introduced Stanley Prusner, Mr. Prion, to the Pope. Interesting, very interesting stuff. I don't know why that is. I don't know why Koprowski was saved by the church. I don't know. I don't know, good guy, bad guy. I can't quite figure him out. However, though, I believe he was right. If there's going to be any safe vaccine or effective vaccine, it's going to be oral or mist. It's not going to be intramuscular injection. And there's the whole argument. You don't need a PhD. You don't need thousands of hours of research. And every single stupid-ass podcaster and interviewer out there that's wasting time, they've wasted 5 to 6 years. They've argued about the existence of viruses and all this other shit. They never asked a simple question. Maybe we shouldn't inject things. Oh, well. One more thing I have to throw out there. I should have said this before. A very compelling concept about Hilary Koprowski, okay? And that is he wrote this document, which is referenced often in, and Paul Offit, by the way, worked for Hilary Koprowski, as mentioned in the New York Times obituary for Hilary Koprowski. You know, Paul Offit in his fake sparring with Manly Hands Holland, the president of Children's Health Defense. It's this paper here, 1952, latent or dormant viral infections. I think now I understand it. The purpose of this, and written by Hilary Koprowski, the purpose of this paper is to review some of our knowledge concerning latent virus infections and hope that such a survey of the distribution, variety, and behavior of these infections may facilitate the study of the neoplastic processes in men and in domestic and laboratory animals. I shall purposely avoid giving a definition of latency, since its broad ecological view of the phenomenon of survival of parasites in nature is taken. It becomes clear that the stabilization of the host-parasite relationship cannot be based only upon the multiplication of virus at the expense of destroyed cells. I believe that when Hilary Koprowski was observing that the intramuscular injection of a rabies vaccine, for example, was causing paralysis, I don't think that he knew exactly why that was happening. I don't believe that he was actually seeing that purely as a body being damaged. I suspect that he was interpreting that, as, well, maybe there just happens to be polio in the system already, but it's in a dormant or latent state. Maybe the polio that's already in the system isn't really hurting anybody, but maybe the intramuscular injection of something stirred it up a little bit and woke up the latent or dormant virus infection. In other words, if someone was getting infant was getting the infantile paralysis, he was potentially, and I don't think this was necessary, it could have been nefarious, but it probably wasn't. I suspect that he actually thought that there was a polio virus that was being woken up, that was already there and being woken up by the intramuscular injection. So therefore, there's these endemic latent viruses that we have to be careful of. I was viewing this document with prejudice. I thought that Koprowski was trying to justify more vaccines. I thought he was trying to justify that there was all of this dormant stuff in the body, and maybe we can take advantage of this stuff someday and have more vaccines. This document heavily influenced the career of Judy Mikovits. Chronic fatigue, XMRV, all of these things. Oh, it's all endemic right now. Maybe we just need a vaccine for HIV, given the fact that it's endemic. Now, by the time it became the Mikovits might have been thinking that way, and her mentors. I'm not really sure yet. However, though, it highlights that I think the early explanations that he was coming up with about why are these chain of events happening? Why is there inflammation in the spine? Why is there childhood paralysis and potentially autoimmunity to one's own nerves, muscles, etc.? Why is this even happening? He might have actually thought it's not because polio doesn't exist, But polio does exist. The poliovirus does exist. And it just happens to be endemic. And it just happens to be woken up. And maybe it's not woken up if the polio vaccine is ingested versus injected. I have a totally new appreciation for this document right now. And I apologize it took me so long to see it that way. Why didn't Sherry Tenpenny get there? Why didn't she get there? Maybe I don't know. I don't know what it means to be smarter than someone else, but I can't possibly be that much smarter than her. It's because either she's paid not to get there, or it's because she's like someone else trying to solve the JFK assassination by starting off by reading the same 10,000 books about the JFK assassination that have been written by other people who also didn't solve it. Maybe she's written the same vaccine skepticism books and then wrote more books of her own, after which more books were written on those books. Instead of just asking a simple question. Hey, what about Estes Kefauver? Hey, maybe it's bad to intramuscularly inject any combination of substances. It's not a cop-out. It's the direct route to learning about something. Injecting a combination of substances is dumb. It's dangerous. It's dumb to think that it could be done to improve the immune system. That was a dumb idea. The possibility of vaccines being made safe and possibly even effectively providing protection against something if taken orally, it's possible. It's also a lot easier to test, and it's possible. And obviously other people, including Paul Offit, are open to the possibility. Imagine how much more dialogue can be had if we start off on that bridge first. Because I'll bet you Paul Offit would have a pretty hard time making the point that we need to keep intramuscularly injecting people. I think after a couple of beers in a private conversation, he would fold pretty quick. Because that's something that can't be defended, which is precisely why that's where they don't want people fighting. All right, guys, 1 hour, 54 minutes. Thanks for listening. I don't think this one needs any editing. I'm just going to put it right onto the other channels. Let's see if I can get those numbers to meet the baseline for the month. Love you very much. Thank you for the support. Take care. God bless.